So you had written an article for Current Affairs uh, called the Tuttle twins in the case of the really bad libertarian propaganda. So for anybody who's managed to live their life right, so this combination of words, the Tuttle twins, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything to them. Fill us in. What? Who are the Tuttle twins?
Yeah, so the Tuttle Twins are a very prominent series of conservative children's books that teach conservative, more libertarian, or small government or freedom-based messages, and they're pitched to various age groups. So, like in the Tuttle Twins series, you've got a lot of books that are pitched to like young readers, like grade school kids. And then there's like a set of, here's one of them, books for like the young adult age kids, like the Choose Your Own Adventure books, but the Choose Your Own unintended market outcome here. And there is a pretty extensive series there, and they're very like attractively produced. And if you're excessively online, like most of us, you'll often see ads for these things. If the social networks know you have any interest at all in social issues, they'll pitch these things to you regardless of your opinion. They have just that much donor money to burn off. And so you may have seen these things around. They're pretty prominent, but they're also part of like a growing conservative movement. I have a new article coming out in the current issue of Current Affairs on another terrible kids book series, which we can refer to also briefly. Very exciting. So sadly, this is becoming an area where I'm specialized in. Be careful what you get good at, kids, like they say.
Yeah. You'll just have to. Yeah, it's like one of those actors who are upset because they have to play variations of the same role in every movie for the rest of their life.
Yeah, like it's not so bad, but if you're typecast like reading awful things, like that's just these are the lives we chose for ourselves, though. So.
Yeah, fair enough. So like something, in a way, it reminds me a little bit. I mean, you said conservative, and we should say, that this is a very specific flavor. That isn't what people might think of, right? It's this sort of very specific kind of like hardcore libertarian, version. But like it's a hardcore libertarian version of the kind of thing conservatives seem to be really into. And I mean, we can speculate why, but it's just an interesting fact that they are. So, for example, like a year ago, a little more than a year ago, we did an episode with Ben Udashin where we read a book that's put out by I think this is actually like the Huckabee family's behind this, called The Kid's Guide to Fighting Socialism.
Oh, I remember that one actually. Yes, I also saw ads for that. That's great. I'm glad. So Mr. Udashen took that one on. I should thank him. What did you learn? What were the proceeds from that analysis?
Mostly that I don't understand what age group The Kid's Guide to Fighting Socialism is aimed at, because like what they feel the need to define and like which terms they just assume the kids already know about is sort of delightfully random. And Ben's take on this, when I asked him what age group, was 70 to 90. He said that this is all pitched at because like it doesn't really matter what a child actually thinks of this. The Kid's Guide to Fighting Socialism is strictly pitched at the grandparents to like hand it to the kids while glaring at the parents.
Definitely. That's a great point. Really, that's interesting. Yeah, because even down to like the design of the ads, if you see the video ads for the Tuttle Twins, incredibly delightful. There's this darling child, and he thinks he wants cookies because that's socialism, and then the parents come in and say, "No, you need to learn to be capitalist." Like it's in the most like just like open, patronizing way. Like stupid kids, that's why you're socialist. Stupid Albert Einstein and George Orwell. Little kids, basically. Thank God we're here. I will say, as you said, it's pitched to a very specific genre of conservative. Absolutely, Ben. And the key way to see that, I would say, is that if you take a look at these guys, every one of the the main series, the youngest pitched books, each one of them is based around the life of a prominent conservative intellectual. So like just the one that's right here in my hand, yes, Fate of the Future, which is, are we going to have enough freedom to be capitalist in the future? It's dedicated to Murray Rothbard, the famous, as I recall, U of Nevada conservative there, and author of a number of extremely difficult libertarian texts. That speaks to what it's really about. Like the other series I've reviewed more recently is much more general conservative. There's a book on Ron Reagan and Barrett, the new Supreme Court jurist, and others. But these are very specifically about, pitching to kids. Like, Miraculous Pencil, which is built around Milton Friedman's famous Free to Choose episode, where he talks about no one person knows how to make a pencil because all these companies around the world, even in reality, half of these industries are monopolized. And yes, one person can make an industrial chemical or a server center. It's true. But it's a interesting little series. But as you said, very much pitched to, like, I'm going to tell these kids. It's pitched to adults getting it for the kids. And I personally have friends who are like, oh, after your review, I went and bought this. So, like, yeah, you did. You, a 40-year-old man, bought them. Exactly. You're giving them to some kid who's going to look at it briefly before they look at their phone and play Nintendo at the same time. Like, that's the reality of these things.
Yeah. Pencil thing is good, by the way. They famously, I believe the primary reason for the fall of the Soviet Union is they couldn't figure out how to make a pencil in a planned economy.
It's a sad, such a sad, a very painful and true moment for us. Yes, they never had any pencils. That's, they just didn't have them. It's amazing they lasted for many decades and had a huge effect on world affairs with their complete inability to do anything. Very fun though, but very much a business model based on pitching to patronizing family members.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at some of these titles. So I think some, at least in some cases, just based on the title, some people who spent way too much time listening to conservatives and libertarians will be able to sort of identify what the non-cutesy source material is.
Yeah, definitely covers of some classic hits here. That's right.
So we have, for example, the Tuttle twins and the case of the broken window. Tell us about the case of the broken window.
Yeah, this was a great one. This is actually, I saved this for the last piece I reviewed in the current affairs article from 2020, where I reviewed these guys. You saw that earlier. I recommend folks, give that a check out. It's a lot of fun. So I saved this for last because, this is one of the choose your own adventure themed books. So it's for slightly older readers and it's a little more rich. In this one, the girl Tuttle twin, whose name I forgot somehow, is up to bat at a neighborhood kids softball game, and it's the bottom of the tied game, etc., in the cliche leagues. And unfortunately, her great at bat ends up destroying a window in a beloved local landmark church. And you can choose various adventures around this. You can run away and pretend you didn't do it. You can fess up. You can do lots of different things. I chose in my review to be a responsible socialist, and you fess up to the church. Right away, the next scene, the church is talking to you and your parents, and the church says, well, the deductible is so painful on this, and we'll have higher insurance rates. We'd prefer not to even claim it. And it's like, okay, the kid will work off the cost of just replacing the window. I just like that they throw in why people never make insurance claims, why that shouldn't be a market. Stunning thing. Just left by the wayside as we go through the book. Very impressive. But yes, that's exciting, and there's a ton of adventures you can go on. The ton of branching trees, of course, like all these books have. And as I recall, the one I did, you end up working with your weird uncle who has very popular YouTube videos. I remember that was mentioned, so he's a weirdo. Right away this guy's like, oh, what weird secret does this guy have? And you go to. Like that's right. That was this book.
Gonna call Family Protective Services the second you hear that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's my YouTube uncle. Like, So they end up going to a poor neighborhood that's going to be displaced by the city for some development. This was connected to the church in some way. And they go to this household, and you're getting suddenly the dialogue, which until now has been very young adult standard style, suddenly is like kind of this weird patois with lots of apostrophes and weird new words. And after married paragraphs, they don't explicitly state that the characters they're speaking to are African American. Eventually you reach one of the illustrations, which sort of seems to confirm it visually, because of course this book is at least illustrated, even if it's not like a full-on kids book. But it's, and of course, the African American characters in this are very public sector building, antagonistic to these public spending programs. They're going to, supposedly lead to new development. And this was something I mentioned in the review that you see a lot, especially in the littler kids books, the more classic ones. When this author wants to express his horrible niche right-wing guy views, most of the time, the character saying it is an African-American woman of color with a working class job. Like many times, there's in that book, the Broken Window one, it's a black single mom explaining why you don't understand the economics of this. That's literally a line that appears. In the other books, there's a blue collar teacher who says, you need to realize how markets work. And there's another one as well, like again and again, which is just kind of striking because, as we know, libertarianism is one of the most distinctly white boy schools of thought that there is. So it's a little bit cringy to see this happen so many times, but it's definitely a theme of that Broken Window book as well.
Yeah. So one, I don't think we have this. I don't think we have this graphic, but my favorite title is the title of one of your books is a variation of the same thing. This is a variation of is the Road to Serfdom, SURF. Serfdom.
Yes. Sadly, I couldn't provide a graphic on that because I ended up sending it back to current affairs editor Nathan Robinson to use for the table of contents tableau that he likes to make. So sadly, that one served again. We try to use all the parts of the book here. But I do have my notes on it. Yeah, that's a great one. Yes, they go to the Tuttle twins family. They go on vacation to a beach community called whatever it's called, but they're displeased because a highway they used to use has been shut down to provide new transportation to a new state-led development called serfdom, and it's destroying the local economy because it changed incentives. Because while markets have no power in them anywhere to distort pricing signals about what to make and what people want to buy, government only does those. And in this book, when they built a new road to this publicly funded community, they closed the old road to the original town. These are the crazy, weird scenarios that you kind of get in these books. That's kind of a it's always these oddly contrived scenarios, and they end up looking into it and finding that and then the government sponsored that's right, that's the one that has the big section on eminent domain. The government comes in and they make people leave their communities, and it's very sad when that happens, which is amazing. Capitalism is more than anything about constant renewal and tearing down the old. The strangest position you can take if you're a capitalism supporter, right, is that antagonism to eminent domain, which makes sense if you're just a vanilla conservative. But if you're a libertarian, I mean, yeah, it's overturning something that's been there, but you can't really be against that. That's the whole Schumpeter creative destruction thing. Interesting books. They're very cute and they have cute titles and stuff, but the arguments I kind of said in my review don't even really quite do justice to the libertarian arguments, which is a really bitter kind of failure,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the eminent domain thing is interesting because, of course, all right, I mean, I get that it obviously wildly violates libertarian principles. I take it, by the way, that the road to serfdom, that the eminent domain, in fact, as I recall, that's to build a public road. So it's not like some awkward situation where eminent domain is to tear down some houses so they can build a new sports stadium that's owned by some private corporation. But
crazy.
Yeah, right. But also, I always thought it was funny. Okay, so if you think about Ayn Rand, actually, yeah. So Atlas Shrugged, which of course another of these books is an atlas. Is sort of, actually, we can talk about this, kind of an extended pun on Atlas Shrugged. But in that book, the libertarian hero of the book, I've always loved that what he works for specifically is a train company, a railroad. And I always thought, it's okay, well, hold up. Let's really think about property rights and railroads, because in a libertarian utopia where there was no such thing as eminent domain, could you have railroad lines? What would those look like, right? You meet the
landowners
who doesn't want to sell,
you'd have to have an unbroken chain of voluntary transaction with those landowners, and what we economists will say is well, then each one of them will have some price that they'll sell for, bullshit though. Like if you, I mean, let me tell you, my
No.
grandpa was a Kentucky farmer. I mean, an economist would definitely say, well, everyone's got a price, and that's, you know, I mean, that's economist for you. Like just people personally of my relations are farm, you know, land attached enough that they're not just gonna sell, even if you dangle. They'll be mad if you offer them more. You know, yeah. So like that's difficult.
Yeah. I said no. I'm not. It's like, no, we're not negotiating. I said no. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, which is like, yeah, I mean, this is a concept that, I mean, I would think that like a plausible economic theory would have room for, which is called integrity. That like some people just like aren't going to do things no matter how much you pay them to do them.
Yeah, you know, economics can't look into the heart, and our reaction to that has just been like, well, that, you know, that's for the humanities. We don't need that. But the truth is, I mean, yeah, any kind of crazy loyalty and irrational attachments drive people's views, especially as they get older. You know, and like, I mean, my God, if you know how people live in the farm economy, I mean, there's not. It's like you and the land a lot of the time, and now we're like, we're pushing you off this land. Like, oh, so I'll have nothing. Fuck off. Like, it's not so easy. Yeah, and if you look at like any big kind of, you know, network based,
I mean that's like every like, and that's like every movie from like 5 years in the 80s is like about somebody. It's about like the old person who refuses to sell. You know, when they like want to knock everything down to do a mall or something.
Yeah, haven't you seen that one scene in Back to the Future 2 where tell that railroad we're not going to sell you here, we ain't going to be terrorized? Haven't you seen the new Deadwood movie where Charlie Utter gets murdered by that rotten Senator Hearst for refusing to sell his plot of land? Like, that's what goes on. And no one likes the big authoritarian state tearing down someone's, like, you know, possibly still, yeah, family-owned homestead. But the fact is, like, that's why cities are connected and why we can have big markets that give us big scale economies that make things cheap, so we can like have under whatever economic system some kind of standard of living. Like, it requires scale of production. We have hundreds of millions of people to feed, you know. So one way or another, some authoritative entity is usually involved in doing this. Maybe in a hysterically corrupt manner, like the railroads, or maybe in a moderately less like the highways. But it's usually that way. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know how they get around that. Maybe they have some interesting argument. I don't remember seeing such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is also, I will say, like, well, I mean, actually, you remember you were on for the like, I don't know, when we watched this and like sort of did a little post game commentary back in like, I guess a little over a year ago, because it was like April 2021. I did a debate with Gene Epstein at the Villages in Florida.
I remember that one. That was great.
And there was this point where I asked him in that debate. It's like, okay, so here's something I really want to know, right? It was like during the part where you could ask each other questions. I was like, okay, do you actually believe? Because there's this thing that libertarians like to do a lot, where like, especially like the really super hardcore ones, where you say, basically, it's a little bit like how if you're the right kind of Christian, like anything good about the world is evidence of the glory of God, and anything bad about it is a result of original sin. It's like a little bit of the same thing. That's like anything good about actually existing capitalism is due to the fact that it's like close enough to like ideal libertarian capitalism to produce these good effects. Anything bad about it is because of statist, you know, intervention in the free market. And so I was just like, okay, but hold on, like, how much do you actually believe the government could be divorced from the economy and we could like still have a thriving economy, right? I mean, like, do you think we could, like, you know, like, because I really want to know, right? Like, no public roads, you know, no government printing currency.
Yeah, they do vary. You know, you have like abolitionists, and you have like menarchists, and like the night guardsman state. Like, there are like different little genres of the tiny amounts that these people will allow. What did that's the time to say?
Oh, he totally dodged the question. He said, because like basically what I was pushing was like, come on, if we didn't have a state that had some level of involvement in the economy, if it wasn't like printing currency and like incorporated businesses and, you know, doing limited liability, all that stuff, right? Like the economy, would be much worse off, right? I mean, like, come on, like this is just like clearly this stuff does grease the wheels of economic activity.
Yeah, it's like a foundation for commerce. You have roads and courts. You can sue people who won't honor business contracts and shit.
No, exactly, right. And he kind of said, well, if I wanted to argue about that, I would have done debate with Paul Krugman. I was like, okay, that's not an answer, but
that's just
but yeah, no, it was really bad, but
very noodly. That's
yeah, no, exactly. But I want to talk. Well, actually, so let's. There's a certain order we want to do this in because there are many rooms in the Palace of Tuttle Twins, and I want to make sure we accommodate. At least give people a flavor of some of the best ones. So we already mentioned Ayn Rand. So let's talk about the Tuttle version of Atlas Shrugged.
Yes. So the Tuttle Twins Atlas Shrugged version, volume. Yes, that's one of my very, very favorites. Very interesting. So the Tuttle Twins, for whatever plot contrivance reason, end up getting jobs at the circus, as one does, and they talk to the different people at the circus and develop friends and look at the kind of jobs that people have and so on. And what they quickly realize is, the way that the story is told in the book, like, wow, some people work much harder and are more valuable as a result than other people. Just the kind of thing the kids say and think together when you're hanging out. You do like fascist worth ranking of your friend. I did that all the time. So that's good. And the big plot event is when the strong man of the circus, Atlas, named, to create the congruity there, of course, with the Ayn Rand classic, ends up disappearing and won't work. And what they realize is that very quickly the entire circus depends on him. He's not just like a popular act at the circus where he bends a bar or lifts a large thing or whatever. Like, he puts up the tent poles and like does a majority of like the cleanup when they move. Like, he's an oddly indispensable in every part of the business figure, which is great. I will say that is very loyal to the Ayn Rand material, which is just like utter pathetic hero worship wank material for people who are conservatives and think business people. Like when you see a picture of Elon Musk, he built Tesla. Oh, he did, huh? He built them. He must get up very early to make all those cars himself. Holy shit. Of course, it's the working forces and the working classes that have built these things, but I take credit for it because I was there to get an early bank loan and build this company up in some way. But with Atlas, like, he runs everything, and so he disappears and everything completely falls apart, partially, literally, as the circus can't operate without him. And actually the kids figure out that he's in a gym, and they go talk to him, and they talk him into returning to the circus, and the tyrannical ringmaster who operates the circus, who partially drove him away with insulting and low pay behavior, apologizes and admits that he's wrong and so on. And everyone learns their lesson, except, of course, Connor Boyack, series author, who in the course of being just so attached to using the Atlas conceit and putting that in the title, which I can understand as someone who's fairly obsessed with jokey gag titles myself. Like, I like that about him. I totally get that. I would be trying to do it myself. That part I think makes sense. There are certain things about this that are redeeming. Like, it is someone's like one true passion project, as idiotically wrong as it is. We can talk about that later. But it's interesting because like really the theme of the book ends up being that like really it's not the ringmaster who's the boss. It's this like essential worker who's creating the value at this place. And then when he leaves, the place can't work. Like those are the events in the book. Like the circus can't operate because they lost this essential worker. It's like if the workers went on strike and that's where all the value is created in the business, and the ringmaster is kind of like, oh, I'm noodly. Why am I in charge? It's like, oh yeah, why are you capitalists in charge? Like in the course of wanting so much to keep that Atlas, imagery, he's committed himself to something slightly more of a socialist message. On the other hand, I mean, they were happy to have a story where the boss isn't really the wonderful figure of it. Maybe it's you, young white man, who will be creating the value of the future in your workplace. But at least all these like crazy moments, like where the kids are there as clowns. Like they're, circus clowns with pins they juggle and so on. And one of the lines is the kids realized, and this is from memory, it's in the review. It says the kids realized that working as a clown isn't very hard. But Atlas, because he lifts heavy things that he's been training to lift, he's the one creating all the value here, because apparently our carnies can't even put up the circus without him and all this stuff. It's just incredible. Like, being a clown looks pretty hard to me. I mean, they run all over the place. They put filthy crap on their faces and startle children. I mean, that's like, I don't think any working comedian or working physical performer would say that. But we're trying to slot people into who's more valuable. And the whole lesson, of course, is that certain people are more valuable than others. And remember to, just respect your boss because he's worth more than you, and get ahead by stepping on your friends. Like, these are the lessons that we pull in. Yeah, it's a natural theme, Andy. Yeah.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.